Welcome, human resource and organization development professionals. I'm here in the hill country of Texas working with an executive team around building culture. And today we're discussing the fundamental leadership skill of setting expectations. If you've seen some of my other videos where I've mentioned Gilbert's 6 boxes, you know that the first requirement for people to do good work is that they know exactly what you expect. Most leaders think that they do this very well. When I ask, do your people know what you expect? I get a nearly universal, of course. When I go to their people and ask what's most important, they are unfortunately less clear. And in a day and time when our organizations continue to get leaner, where more is expected of each person on the payroll, we need for them to be focused, and they need for us as their leaders to clearly spell out where they should prioritize their efforts. Today's video is the first in a 2-part series about setting expectations. Our focus today is on how you tell them what you need. Let's get started. A strong conversation around setting expectation has 4 elements that I want to walk you through right now. It begins with a goal that you communicate. You follow that up with the purpose for the conversation, the purpose for the expected change or rise in behaviors. The third part is what we'll call the line, and I'll explain that more in a minute. Okay? And the fourth is how we're actually going to measure progress. And these 3 elements you want to put together into a dialogue with the people that you're setting your expectations with. You want to begin by stating the purpose of this conversation, and in essence, what you're really aiming for. By the end of this conversation, this is what will be different or be improved. The second part is to explain why this is important, why this conversation merits their attention, why they should change in the first place. Then you lay out exactly what your quality standards are. You define the results that you expect to see in terms of quality, timeliness, cost, and any required behaviors that are necessary in order to meet the standard that you're setting. And then you let them know, here's how we'll keep track of your progress. So, for example, let's walk through. Let's assume that we work together and I am your supervisor and we work in a shop. Okay. And my expectation is that, in fact, we need to have a cleaner shop. Now, I've walked around, how did I come to this? I've walked around and it's been irritating me. And then I stop and I ask myself, because I know that good leaders, whenever they see something they don't expect, didn't want to happen, the performance that's not where it needs to be, they begin by asking themselves the question, how clearly have I set the expectation for my people? And I go, I just didn't really do that for you. So, hey, come on, let's sit down. We need to have a conversation today, and I'd like to talk about how we keep a clean shop. Now, you know at this point, I've said nothing else, what the topic's about, and you also know that since I'm your manager, you kind of know what we're going to have when this is over. The shop is going to be cleaner. This goes against how some people communicate. Some people get into the specifics way too early without telling people the topic and the goal at the beginning. So, to begin, you start with the goal. And then before you say anything else, you communicate the purpose of the conversation. Now, my reason for wanting to keep a cleaner shop might be many things. It could be safety. I see that with things laying on the floor, there's trip hazards, and I want us to have a safer work environment. It could be around organization and efficiency. It could be because the bigwigs from home office are going to be coming by today, and I want us to present a good image. Any of those are fine and legitimate. All I need to do as the leader is be clear before I have the conversation. Why am I coming to you to set the expectation, and then make that part of my dialogue? So, once again, thanks for coming. Let's sit down and let's have a talk about how we keep a clean shop. This is really important for us in terms of our organization. We've got to be more productive, and so that means we've got to have tools ready to hand and be able to move about freely as we go about our work. Now, once I've given you that purpose, and so what did I say the purpose was? I said the purpose was organization. Now I need to, as clearly as possible for you, as specifically as I can, define what clean shop means to me. What is it that I'll be looking at in terms of quality, in terms of timeliness, and in terms of cost that for me will then result in the perfect picture of clean shop? Now for me, the line might be that all tools are put away when not in use. There are no spills, so the floor is dry. Those might be my only characteristics. If for me this defines clean, then I'm good. If clean means more to you, then you would explain further the details that you expect to see. Now, remember, I also said that it needs to have timeliness. So how often is it clean? This should be, perhaps for me, this is constantly clean. Alternately, you might say, well, you know, that's not really realistic. So you might put a time frame on it where you say every day it needs to be cleaned periodically. Whichever is true for you, but you want to provide that information to your people because that's part of the line. Finally, you need to come down and you need to tell them how you're going to measure progress. How are we both going to know that the work is being done to my satisfaction, the expectation is being met, or not? And for me, measuring progress might be, you know, I'll be coming by at noon daily and doing my walkthrough, and I'll be coming by at the end of the day. So it's going to be daily observations at noon and 5 o'clock. Now, you know what I've done. I've given you a couple of gifts by this. By saying, I will be around to check, I've reiterated that this isn't just a fly-by-night thing for me, that this is important. I'm expecting to see a cleaner shop, and I'll be checking on it. So I've reinforced my expectation by this, but I've also, by telling you how and when, I've given you a little bit of latitude. If I'm expecting you to raise your performance, there's probably a lot of other things you have to do besides keeping the shop clean. So now you can work in, oh, I know Rob's going to be coming around today at 5 o'clock. When can I go back and make sure everything's clean? And so I've allowed you some latitude by giving you that information. The one other piece that we'll say at this point about how you set expectation is to remember your tone of voice and your body language. That is, your tone of voice and your body language must be consistent with what you're setting. Too often, particularly when managers are relaying an expectation that perhaps they didn't think was the smartest thing. When cell phones came out, there was expectations that, oh, we don't have our cell phone at work. Well, that was a hard thing for managers to relay to their people. And too often it would be something like, well, you know, hey guys, it's tough, but you know, I really need the cell phones to be put away out of sight. Now, as a manager, I could check off that, in fact, I had told people about, I'd set the expectation around cell phones, but my body language communicated far more than my words. My tone communicated that I wasn't really bought in, so that likely, unless you waved it around in front of me, I would not have a real issue. So I wouldn't really enforce the expectation that I was setting. So, one more time. 4 key elements of a conversation when you're setting expectations. You don't have to do these in this order, but this order really works. Begin with the goal, immediately go to the reason that you're stating this goal. Then, what is your line in terms of quality and how will you go about measuring progress? Do this, and you will have effectively communicated your expectation. Next time, we'll talk about the second part of the conversation. What I don't know at this point is what my people understood and where's their level of commitment and buy-in. You can facilitate that well too, and we'll talk about that in next week's video. Thanks for watching today's video. Setting expectations is such an important skill, and it's almost universally done less well than we need it to be done. These need to be solid, clear conversations because people really want to do good work. And when they really know what you want, really know where your lines are, they'll give you the work that you're asking for. I don't want you to go set the expectation this week. There is a second part that we're going to get into in next week's video that you need to make part of the conversation. So hold off if you're ready to go out and have that talk now. In the meantime, though, you could do some really good field work. What do you need to emphasize or clarify with your people? What would it look like if they were really living the core values that your company espouses? What results do you need to be producing more of? And what behaviors do you need to see more or less of? We need to think through what our expectations are. You have them. We all have them. Most of them aren't written down, but they're all important for the work. So get clear on where you might need to be having the conversation, and we'll give you the second part next week. Until then, be well.